Time for another side-by-side, guys. We're doing the old Submariner versus the new Submariner. Pre-ceramic, ceramic. Let's do it. Welcome back to the Timeless Watch channel, guys. Before we get into anything, what am I wearing today? I'm wearing a Submariner because that's today's topic, is Submariners. This one is a ceramic one with gold in it, so it's two-tone. There is a more popular version of this that has a blue dial and bezel, but I'm a fan of the black dial and bezel. I love the old blue one, the pre-ceramic blue one. That one's very nice dark blue. But the newer blue one is a little too pastel blue for me, so I kind of went for the gold. Anyway, black and gold is kind of cool. It has a strong look to it. Looks a little bit like a wasp sometimes. Look at that. She's badass. So which Submariner should you get? Should you try and get onto a waiting list for the new ceramic one from your AD, or should you pay the premium from a reseller? Or should you just go into any watch reseller store and buy yourself a nice pre-ceramic Submariner from the early 2000s or the 90s? I actually have both. I love them both equally, but there's one I prefer just a little bit more, and I'm going to show you. So let's turn the camera around and have a look at both models. Here we go. So if you're looking around for a Submariner these days, online or in a store, first of all, in a Rolex authorized dealer, you won't find either of these. One is because they don't sell this one anymore. It's the pre-ceramic. And two is this one that they sell is not available anywhere. So you can put yourself on a very long waiting list if you like, but good luck with that. You will find maybe both of these kind of models in a reseller store. And depending on their condition and the situation, you will pay somewhere around $10,000. Definitely for this one, $10,000 or $11,000 if it's brand new. This is the current model, the 2019. And this is the pre-ceramic model. So this is ceramic, this is pre-ceramic. So you'll wonder what the differences are, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. So here they are. The one on the right here is the current model ceramic Submariner. Now, what does ceramic mean? The ceramic refers to this bezel here. It's made of ceramic, which apparently is much more difficult to scratch. This one, on the other hand, has an aluminum bezel, which, although it looks great, it scratches easier than the ceramic. So they are very similar models. This is basically what came out after this. Now, there are some things that are going to hit you straight off about the differences between these. Let's start with the obvious. One looks a lot larger than the other. These are both 40 centimeters, whatever, 40 millimeters across. But this one, for some reason, wears larger. And the reason is because the case of it has been enlarged. And if you compare the two side by side, you'll see this one has a big slab of metal across the bottom, whereas this one seems to kind of blend in with the bracelet a lot more. You'll notice that also that this has kind of muscular shoulders around the edge. That slab of metal that the whole thing is sitting on peeks out over here, whereas this one only barely peeks out. It's kind of more tapered into the case, the dial, and the bezel shape. They call this one the super case. Some people hate it, some people love it. I like them both for different reasons, but I do appreciate the kind of elegant quietness that this one has. This one seems like it's trying a little hard to be a bad boy, whereas this one knows he's a bad boy and he doesn't need to tell anybody, kind of thing. The next thing, of course, is the dial. As you can tell, the hands are basically the same. And of course, they're both black. They both have 4 lines of information. This, incidentally, is one of the newer of the pre-ceramics. In fact, it is the last of the pre-ceramics. It is the V serial number. So it's just before they moved over to this one. So in certain ways, they are very similar on the dial. But you will notice that the hour markers on this one are a lot larger than this. They're more subtle on this one. So they call this the maxi dial. Other than that, they are very, very similar watches. They have the same movement on the inside, the 3135. Tried and tested, trusted movement. And they both use 904L steel, which is Rolex's steel they claim is the best steel in the world, of course. Of course, they claim that, but it is a beautiful steel. It is brushed. This is not high gloss. You'll notice at the side of the case that the steel is high gloss, and on the side of the clasp and so on. But the links here are brushed, and it just makes for kind of a luxurious look. So yes, I did mention the case is a little smoother on this one, and for that reason it wears a little nicer, in my opinion. It kind of sinks into your wrist a little nicer. This one is kind of chunky. It sits very, very well on the wrist. There's no doubt about that. But it definitely shows itself off. It's a different kind of thing. The pip, you'll notice on the newer model, stays right inside the triangle there on the bezel. It's just inside it, and it's kind of tall. I don't know if the camera's picking that up. Whereas the pip on this bezel just creeps right outside the triangle. And this is the way they've been since many years before. They only changed it in 2012 when they moved to this design. And though it does protrude up, it doesn't protrude up as much. It's a little flatter on the side. In fact, I will say that this watch is overall flatter and smoother in design. The clasp, one of the big differences. Now you will notice the stickers on this. This one is absolutely brand new. In fact, I'm trying to pay attention not to scratch it. It still has the stickers on, which is kind of a rare thing. So this is the original clasp on the Submariner. It's, no matter what model you get from pre-2010, is going to have this clasp. It's well known. It's a very famous clasp, but now it's kind of criticized a lot because the new clasp came out. So this one's considered a little bit flimsy. Now it has this lock that seals the closure, and then you get your finger under here and it breaks away. And this is the classic Rolex clasp that people have seen for decades now at this point. I will say it feels a little tinny in comparison to the new clasp. And if there was any criticism of a Rolex Submariner or other Rolex models, it was definitely that this felt a little thin and weak. On to the new one. Well, people love this one, and I'll show you why. First of all, they put the crown right there where you get your finger under, whereas on this one, the crown is kind of buried into just the design. It has nothing to do with where you grab the clasp. This one has the crown right there, so you get your finger right there, open it up. The build is already, I can feel under my fingers, something a lot more substantial. Going to clip this open. As you can see, the stickers are still on there, but it's a way different thing. I hope the camera's focusing correctly there. Feels a lot more solid, a lot more substantial. It's a much longer clasp, and the reason why is because they have this new thing called a glide lock. What they've done here is a very clever little system, so that you don't have to keep going back to the store and having a link on their bracelet removed or added to make things looser or tighter. They developed this glide lock system, and let me show you how it works. You pop this, and then you can push this up and down and find a new place where it's comfortable, and then push it back in and it clicks, and now you've just tightened the whole bracelet, and you can put it back on your wrist if your wrist is cold or if you're dehydrated or whatever. And then you can expand it for those hot days, humid days, and there you go. That's all it takes. And it's just one of those miraculous things. Very, very simple idea. And I think it's paramount if you're going to have a comfortable watch all year round. Otherwise, you'll find yourself in the store all the time having them remove or add links. The case back on both is unremarkable, you might say. Something about Rolex, I don't know why. They just don't pay much attention to the case back. For now, it's just super plain. There is no information, no Rolex logo. Of course, you have the Rolex crown, the 5-point crown, on the crown of the watch in both cases, but nothing on the back like you will find on an Omega, where you see their logo and various different pieces of information. Perhaps they do this because they think maybe people want to inscribe things, a message. Maybe if it's a gift, you want to give a personal message on the back of the watch or whatever. I don't know what the reason is, but they've always just done it like that. Speaking of engraving, one of the big differences on these ones is that they have an engraved rehaut. The rehaut is the piece of steel around the dial on the inside of the sapphire crystal, where it says Rolex, Rolex, Rolex all the way around. Not on the bottom here, on the bottom part. I'm not going to show it to you for obvious reasons, but the serial number is there. But for the rest, it says Rolex, Rolex, Rolex all around, which I personally love. I think it's a great addition. These models normally don't have it, but this particular one does. And it's because it is the final model before they moved to this new design. They were already beginning to make certain changes. And they did add the rehaut, the engraved rehaut. I hope you can make it out there. I personally love that this one has that. All the previous models to this just had a plain rehaut. Another thing that they did, they removed the holes. There were holes here in the lugs for releasing the bracelet and adding a new bracelet or whatever. And I personally found those to be very ugly, especially on such a beautiful watch. So they removed those on this, and they made it a little bit more difficult to reach, but on the inside you can reach the pin and release the bracelet from the watch, which is a great thing. It's a very special thing about this. Of course, no holes on this. It's the new model. They were moving over. So you have the rehaut and you have the no holes. And lastly, let's just take a quick look at the Loom. This is the original Luminova, Super Luminova, which is quite beautiful. I love it. And it's that familiar green that we know on these kind of watches. And this, of course, is the chromalite. Very, very solid. Again, the maxi dial. It's larger. As you can see, it's a kind of a pale blue color. So there they are side by side, both looking really handsome. This one, I have to say, is a little brighter right now, but of course these things, they fade after a few minutes and then they remain kind of dull for the whole night, which is the idea. You don't want this thing to wake you up because it's so bright. I personally, on a final note, I will say that between the two, I have more of a fondness for this. And the reason why is because I feel the design is just a little classier. I think Rolex kind of hit the perfect point. I'm glad they got rid of the holes on this final model. I like the engraved rehaut. It's not something you see really. You have to kind of really stare at the watch to see it. But I like that it's there. It's like a detail that requires a second look to see, or a third look maybe. I just find that the balance of the shape and so on is quite elegant. And again, it sits on the wrist in a very kind of classy, elegant way. I find the new one to be a little too boisterous. I love the design still, but it's trying to prove something, which I find as time goes on tends to be the way things are with cars and various other things. designs get a little bit more boyish and a bit more immature. And I have to say that I believe this design to be just a tad immature in comparison to the old one. It looks like it's got something to prove, whereas this guy, he's got nothing to prove to anyone. He's cool, and he doesn't need to attract any attention to himself. You want to come find who he is, he's there, and he's super cool. But he's not going to come up to you and tell you who he is. This guy is going to come over and tap on your shoulder and go, look who I am. It's got slightly different personality to this. So if you're like me and you agree that this one is kind of the perfect design, then you're in luck, because you're gonna have some options. I know $7,000, $8,000 is a lot more than most people are willing to spend, but if you're looking at this video, you're probably in the market, so good for you. Save a few grand and just a slightly quieter, more confident and classic design. So there it is. This one's from 2010 and this one's from 2019. Actually, it's brand new. All right, guys, that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next one. Cheers.